G'day and welcome to another edition of Chris Rankin's Music Crush. A little bit of everything today. We got some metal, blues rock, some pop rock, heavy psych, some singer-songwriter, and yeah, that's pretty much it. But a little bit of everything today. Just what I've been listening to. I thought I'd just share it to you. Some quick shout outs. First of all, someone I've recently started watching and I really enjoy her channel is Bev at ClarkOVision. Really great stuff that she always shows, really enjoy. Aaron Mutha Alamare, of course, a great metal channel. So just an incredible collection of metal. I really always enjoy watching his channel. I've become pretty good friends with him as well. Guz69 regularly comments on my channel and I've been watching his channel. I love his setup. I think it's a music room or living room, just fantastic look. Sea of Tranquility, who I'm a massive fan of everything that Pete Pardo does and all the gang. I haven't watched the latest episode of Hudson Valley Squares, which I think came out yesterday morning my time. Always watch that. And of course, my main man, Aaron, the Metal Theologian. So make sure you subscribe to their channels. I'd really appreciate it. I'm always watching theirs. Some really great channels. A couple of new albums I've been listening to. Tussmork, their brand new album. Fantastic album. Spelljammer, a stoner metal, stoner rock band. Abyssal Trip is the name of their latest album. Very good stuff. Einherjar, which are a really great long-time Viking metal band. They've come out with their new album called North Star, which I really love. Sandstorm, with their interesting EP. Yeah, I've had a couple of discussions with some people about one of the tracks on there. It's a good band. They're from Canada. I can't remember the name of their first EP. It came out in 2019. It's got like a purple sort of wizard on the front. And there's one that's just came out like yesterday or a couple of days ago, Sandstorm, and I think that's pretty... the Desert something. Desert Warrior, I think that the name of the album is from memory. It's only a 4-track EP. Very interesting, very sort of traditional heavy metal. And track 3 in particular has a very interesting sound to it. I think I may have heard it before, but anyway. So let's get on to what I've been listening to. And first of all, I have spoken before, I could almost make this a series, but I've spoken before about last year when things were, we had the pandemic and a bit more time at home. I had the chance to revisit and go back and find albums that I'd heard as a kid in the 80s, and all I could remember was the album artwork. My mind's and brain's pretty good. If I've seen an album artwork, I don't always necessarily perhaps remember the name, but that artwork is always sort of etched in my brain, and I'm able to remember it and sort of, how can you say, tag it with certain different music and bands, and it's a good way of remembering it for me. So with that time, I went back and searched through lots of images of album covers with certain things that I thought I was looking for. I found the Alpha Centauri CD that I showed before. I found the Fuzzy Duck album. I found the Mighty Baby album that I've shown before. And I also found this absolute beauty. This may be, without being over the top here, but this may be one of the best 70s heavy metal album that never really got its due. It's a one-off album. They did since reform a long time later, like late 2000s. But it's a one-off. It is one of the heaviest 1970s heavy metal albums. It certainly is hard rock and heavy psych, but their heavy tracks, they're some of the heaviest that you'll ever hear. And so this came out in 1972. The song Primitive Man, I'm pretty comfortable in saying that's probably the earliest sludge metal song you've ever heard. It is grimy and and sludgy and slow and heavy as hell, fuzzy as anything. You know, this is 1972. And the vocalist, who I can't remember, but his voice, it goes into a semi-growl at times. It's kind of rough, but, you know, it really is a lot more rougher than anyone else. And not just rough because he stayed up way too late last night and has had too much to drink. More rough that, you know, it is bordering on a semi-growl at times. What else is on here? They had a little bit of a tiny hit with the single Kamikaze Moth, which is on here as a bonus track. Originally, it wasn't on the original album that came out in 1972. They're from Wiltshire in England. But also you've got Frustration, which is sort of a heavy psych, like groover, hard rock. Then you've also got When the Wolf Sits, maybe one of the best heavy metal songs of the whole of the 1970s. It is phenomenal. It is absolutely phenomenal in every way. It's exactly what you want from that time period, but for 1972, it's damn heavy. You've also got Beyond the Grave, which has got a little bit of a Led Zeppelin 3 feel about it, which for a song called Beyond the Grave is kind of interesting, but yeah, not quite as light and bumptious as some of that album is. And don't get me wrong, Led Zeppelin 3 is my favourite Led Zeppelin album for sure. But yeah, it's kind of light. And then you've got She Came Like a Bat from Hell. Brilliant. Heavy metal song, groove, just so many great riffs in this album. So that's Jerusalem, and the album is called Jerusalem as well. And it's just got a very heavy sound. You know, I don't wish to be disrespectful, but I feel like they took what Black Sabbath was doing, and Deep Purple a little bit, and Bang and Sir Lord Baltimore, and really just cranked up the heaviness, the concrete feel to it. It's just a very heavy album, but in a good way, in a really good way. I love this album. I absolutely adore this album, and this is one that I found that I'd heard bits and pieces as a kid and went back hunting through album covers and finally found it and got it last year. Jerusalem, 1972, Jerusalem. If you don't know this album, I would strongly suggest you go and hear some of the tracks of it, certainly the ones that I've suggested. And if you do, well, take it out of your rack and give it a blast, because it's so good. Now, a little bit of pop rock. I'm a very big fan of pop rock. Very big. Don't be misled. I mean, I'm a big heavy metal fan, massive, all the extreme stuff, everything. But I have a very decent amount of pop rock in my collection. I particularly love 70s and 80s pop rock, and all throughout. I mean, I took my daughter to see Katy Perry, big stadium arena show that was back in 2018, and I loved it. I'm a big fan of hers. I think a good well-written pop song, pop record is just fantastic. Loved everything about that concert, had a great time. So on to what I'm going to show. So this gives you a bit of an idea of some of the pop rock that I really love. I just absolutely adore it, and I love this album. I've had this album since it came out. Of course, this is Mike and the Mechanics and their self-titled debut of 1985. Absolutely magnificent, top to bottom. This is one of those records you just put on and I let go, and I don't even think about, not that I ever really do on a record anyway, but I never think about lifting the needle on this all the way through. This is actually a 1985 original Canadian press on WEA. So good. I mean, of course, you've got the big singles on here. Of course, Silent Running. Can you hear me? Can you hear me running? One of my favourite songs of all time, any genre. I absolutely love it. Doesn't matter how many million times I've heard it. I still love it. I love the sci-fi story to it and the background to it. Of course, it was from that TV show. I can't remember the name of this show now. But yeah, you also got All I Need Is a Miracle, and of course you've got the two vocalists that were on this, because of course you've got Paul Young and you've got Paul Carrack as well. I like Paul Carrick's solo career. I never know if it's Paul Carrick or Carrack. I don't know. I hear it two different ways, but I like Paul Carrack's solo career. I've got quite a few things of his as well. So Paul Young, of course, does the All I Need Is a Miracle. He does the vocals on that one. But you've got other great songs. Part Avian is an interesting, a little bit slow, but still pretty good. You've got Hanging by a Thread. Now, don't get me wrong. When I say heavy synth, I don't mean it's over the top with its synth. But somehow the synth gives it a heaviness. I don't know really why, but it's quite a heavy sort of a song and really good. And then Take the Reins. Take the Reins is a real sort of rockin' track. Full of hooks. This album has got more hooks than a fisherman's basket, I tell you. It really has, just all the way through. Absolutely love this record so much. I played this to death in the 80s when I wasn't listening to Maiden and Slayer and Metallica and Tank and Bowie and everything else around that time. This album got a heavy spinach in 1985 and all throughout the 80s. I love it, and I still play it very much to this day. Mike and the Mechanics. Mike and the Mechanics. Brilliant. Still their best album, I think. The Living Years that came out after was good, but I felt it was a little bit, at times, was a little bit too saccharine for me. As much as I still liked it, it was a little bit too saccharine. Good album though. Very good album. Now, if you know me, you'll know that this band is right up there in the Royal Kingdom for me, for metal bands. Of course, I'm talking about those crazy Swedes, Meshuggah. I love this band. I won't use that ridiculous genre that some people call them, which is just ridiculous. And they're not even that. I can't stand that use of that genre. For me, these guys are extreme progressive metal. Of course, they started out as a technical thrash band and then moved into an extreme progressive metal band. I've seen them 5 times. The time that I saw them at Metropolis City in Perth in 2013 would be easily in my top 10, not just concerts, but their set, that particular set, the sound, the lighting, everything. You felt like you were completely enveloped into a wall of sound. Of course, you've got Thomas Harker and his ridiculous polyrhythmic drumming. If you've never heard or seen him drum, check out any of his songs, any of Meshuggah's songs, and just the way he drums is just ridiculous. It's all off beat. Interesting band because you want to headbang them to them so much, but the rhythms are just so offbeat and so irregular and unorthodox. It's very hard to actually keep time with the headbanging. Now, this is my favourite album of theirs. Nothing that they have done is less than about a 9 out of a 10 for me. This is their 3rd album. Now, this I got last year. I think it was Nuclear Blast. Nuclear Blast started reissuing all these in these beautiful gatefold. So I got the first 3. I got Contradictions, Collapse, Destroy, Erase, Improve. Of course, Destroy, Erase, Improve with that alarm clock from hell. Just so good. You know when you hear that alarm clock from hell in that song that you know what's coming. And then this, which is Chaosphere. Love this. Everything about this packaging is beautiful. Now, we've literally got... We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 songs, and they've split it up into 4 discs. So it's only 2 songs per side. So it's just spread out so beautifully. You can probably see, I don't know if you can see the track separation there. But just beautiful. So the sound is stunning. I love this band. I love this album. You've got Concatenation, brilliant song. Corridor of Chameleons, Neurotica, and of course, probably in my top 10 favourite metal songs of all time, New Millennium, Cyanide Christ, which has just got a beat and a rhythm to die for. It's the ultimate neck breaker. I could be anywhere. I could be in a doctor's waiting room. I could be in an elevator. I could be in the most boring, sedate places in the world. And if I heard someone playing that song, my neck would just start going. So good. And if you've never seen the music video to Meshuggah and New Millennium Cyanide Christ, give it a go. It is brilliant. It is the guys doing a video showing that they are heavy metal fans, and it is magnificent. And that song, when they do it live, you can actually, you know, you feel like the hairs are standing up on your arms, and you feel your skin moving. It's just the way they play, the sound quality is so good. But you know, I love this band. I can never talk highly enough of Meshuggah. I buy their album the minute it comes out. I love them very much, and yeah, this is my favourite, Chaosphere. This is their third album, 1998. This is brilliant. I could show that in almost any video. I could show any of my Sugar in almost any video. I love them that much. Now next, I always show an Australian band in my videos. This one, certainly in the 90s, you don't hear much from them these days, but certainly in the 90s, these two guys and girl were really quite big, certainly in Australia. Very busy touring band. I mean, they are from over in New South Wales. So they're from a little town called Finley, which is right on the border, the southern border of New South Wales and Victoria. So sort of halfway between Sydney and Melbourne, but sort of close to Melbourne. And they were in Perth so many times. Now, I'm not exaggerating. I like to keep track of these things. And maybe there's a couple that I missed, but I've seen this band about 18 to 20 times at least. And they're from the other side of Australia, and I've still seen them that much. They were regularly over here doing a lot of like university gigs and small sort of festivals. Not the big, large festivals, but the festivals that sort of had, you know, 7, 8 or 9 sort of Australian bands on. And in the early mid-90s, I loved this band. I fell off them a little bit. And I'm not being elitist and not being silly when I say that I fell off them when they became commercial. They deserved all the credit and all the selling of albums that they did, but I felt like that their sound pandered a little bit. And the Jump Shark episode for me with them was when they covered Black Betty. Don't have anything against that song. It's probably been overplayed. It's probably been a little bit over-covered. And then when they covered it, it was a huge smash for them. And that's fine. I'm happy that a whole lot of fans got to know them because of that song. But now, forever and a day, they've always been known for that song, which is a shame because the stuff that they did before, especially off this album and the one after that I'm about to show, was heavy metal, was decent, good heavy metal. But they also had some very avant-garde moments. And heavy metal mixed with sort of a jazz fusion and sort of psychedelia as well. And I'm talking about the magnificent band Spiderbait. Definitely one of my favourite Australian bands of all time. As I say, I've seen them about 18 to 20 times. Could even be a little bit more than that because there might have been a couple of festivals that I went and I forgot that they were on there as well. This is called The Unfinished Spanish Galleon of Finley Lake. You wouldn't know that's a heavy metal album, but it is. That's just the way they are. They were kind of quirky. They often had cartoon characters on there as their artwork. The next one after this is probably a little bit heavier again, but a little bit more polished, called Ivy and the Big Apples. And this. Now, the song, Sam Gribbles, is one of my favourite metal songs of all time. It's heavy, it's fast, it's catchy. And if you watch the video or you play the song somehow, the riff that comes out at about the 1:15 mark, a little bit towards the end of the song, is one of the best metal riffs of all time. It's just so good. Another interesting thing about this band, they're only a 3-piece, but they would share vocals. So Cram, who was the drummer, would do the heavier, more raw and more metal vocals. Not really a growl, but more of a bit of like a singing bark type thing. And then you had Janet, who was the lead guitarist, and she would then do the more poppier vocals. Obviously her voice, a female, lighter sort of a voice, she would do the more poppier numbers, the more radio-friendly numbers, certainly later on as well. She would also do some of the songs I have were sort of a bit more punky as well, and she would quite often do the punkier sounding, like, you know, 2-minute sort of songs. But Sam Gribbles on here, it is one of the greatest metal songs ever made, so good. Monty, this sort of really kind of stoner metal, doom metal sound, but with the funk pedal heavily pressed as the big riff comes in. Just magnificent. And then you got Who Are the Freemasons, which does sort of get into the more, it's still heavy metal, but it certainly gets into the avant-garde, a little bit sort of jazz fusiony, where it starts off and it's almost like lounge music in its way. It's very chilled out and cool, and then it just blasts into some big riffs, and then it goes back to the cool, chilled out sort of, just, I love this. I love this band. I won't show them all now. I've got a fairly decent number of their albums, but this is my favourite of theirs. Ivy and the Big Apples has probably 2 or 3 of my favourite songs of theirs of all time, but there's parts of the album that I probably skip a little bit, whereas this, I pretty much don't skip any of this. I mean, you've even got like Yeah, Oh Yeah, and I mean, you can tell pretty much straight away that that's kind of a punk song. More of a pop, definitely a pop-punk song, but yeah. Spiderbait. This is their second album. I reckon they've had seven full-length albums over tour, and on the first album, now normally I'm not a fan of covers at all, I really am not. There's only about 4 or 5 covers that I've ever liked in my life, recorded that is, but on the first album they do a cover of the old Goodies. You remember the old British sitcom The Goodies with the Run song? And they do a cover of that, and it's brilliant, especially when they used to do it live, because it was a sort of a heavy metal punkish version of it. So good. Spiderbait. Also usually try to show a band from Indonesia. Got a pretty decent collection of albums and bands from Indonesia, so I always like to show them. They've got one of the best, definitely one of the best metal scenes of any country I've ever seen. And as I've said to a few people, even in comments on here, a couple of their cities, especially their city Bandung, I call the Metal City, because it just lives and breathes heavy metal, and they will easily get between 800 to 1,000 patrons to a local gig with just local bands playing. That's not a touring band, an overseas band. They'll get 800 to 1,000 patrons just to a local gig. They just live and breathe it. Today, I'm talking about the one and only Death Vomit, or as they are known lovingly in Indonesia as Devo. Just, this band is brutal death metal, 10 out of 10. Just 3, and as you can see, I got this signed by the boys. So you got Roy, and you got Sofyan, and Oki Haribowo. They're from Yogyakarta, the old cultural capital of Indonesia. They started out in 95, so when I first started going to Indonesia in 1996, I've been there quite a lot. Death Vomit and Jasad were 2 of the very first Indonesian metal bands I started listening to. It was about 97, 98. Of course, I'm a metal fan. I go there and ask, what's good, what can I hear, what can I listen, which is also when I started listening to Anggun, who I've shown before. But yeah, Death Vomit. One of the best live death metal bands I've ever heard. Ridiculous that it's only a 3-piece. They do sometimes add an extra live guitarist. I've seen that, where they will bring in another live guitarist just to get a bit more of a thicker, heavier sound. But just some of the best death metal I've ever heard live. They are so good. There is just so many moments where like, oh yeah. But yeah, Death Vomit. This is their second album, Forging a Legacy. I have everything they've done. The Prophecy was the first one. And the Prophecy, it's easy to see because the artwork of the Prophecy has a big Ouija board all over the cover. And then the one that came out last year was called Dominion Over Creation. Death Vomit, the mighty Death Vomit, or Devo. Now, also, I've been listening to this fabulous band. I've got 4 of the first 5 of their albums. I don't have soundtracks. It's the only one of that first run I don't have. Can. Oh man, I love this band. I love music that has hooks and catchiness and all. I always say it, even in the most brutal stuff that I listen to. I love when it's got hooks, something to bring you back. But I also love music. I think it's because of my love of prog. I also love music that challenges me and pushes me and just pushes that boundary. You know, you've gone to that as far out as you've gone, and you've gone, right, that's enough for me. And then you hear something else again and you go, oh, that's pushed me a bit further. But then you look back in about 6 months and go, well, I'm way past that edge now. That's important to me. I like bands that are always pushing my limits, always just testing me. And this band has always done it. Now, having said this, I think this album is probably their most accessible. It's definitely my favourite. I do love Monster Movie as well. Now, you hear the term, I don't know if it's the right term, and I know it's considered a genre, but you hear the term krautrock. To me, they're more psychedelic. They're psychedelic rock. They're prog. I mean, progressive music, progressive rock. What's it all about? It's pushing, progressing. It's changing the boundary, changing what you're used to. And I think this band falls into that category very well. If you don't know of Can, you really should check them out. They are just magnificent. So this is the Future Days album. This is 1973. This is obviously not 1973. This is a 2014 reissue. This is on the Spoon Music. Yeah, Spoon Music. Nice heavy album. I can't remember if it's 180 or 200. But it's a really nice heavy album. Just plays absolutely magnificently. Just really good. You know, of course, you got Bel Air, the big 20-minute masterpiece that takes up all of side B or side 2. And then you've got Future Days. Couldn't remember the Future Days. It starts off, which is the title track, Moonshake, and there's one in the middle, in between Future Days and Moonshake. Can't remember the name of it. Flows so well, and it's probably, of all their albums, certainly of the 70s ones that I've heard anyway, is probably the one that's, yeah, as I say, it's the most accessible. There's quite strong song structures. And there is a hook that you can catch onto. Some of the other ones, they're very progressive, very avant-garde, really good, amazing stuff. But you know, they challenge you. This one, I feel that you might hum some of the melody lines in the supermarket the day after. Can, Future Days, as I say, if you don't know Can, please check them out. They are fantastic. That was Aaron the Metal Theologian, who he regularly talks about Can, and I'm not a big expert on Can, and what I'm trying to say is that I know Can, I love Can, but he's certainly the guy that knows the ins and outs of Can more. So if you want to find out more about the Can and the nuts and bolts of them, I think he's probably more of an expert to talk about, whereas me, I'm just... With this band, I love them for the music, and I've been slowly reading about them more and learning about their history and what they did and what they created in their time. And so, Aaron the Metal Theologian is a bit more of the expert about the mystique of Can. Now this one, I saw Mega Jeff's Rock Hard channel talking about Triton the other day, and he was doing an interview with one of the members of Triton, of course, the Chicago band. So I thought I'd just show my Silent Tiger. This is, of course, the gold disc edition. I got this last year. I saw it, it was either on Boone Overstock. I think I saw it, I got it from Boone Overstock. This came out on Retroactive, this particular edition, so from last year. It's a 1990 album, pretty much straight up heavy metal, a little bit of progressive metal to it, but this came out in 1990. I've always been a pretty big fan. They don't have much. I think they only had 2 albums that came out initially in their initial run. But they are back, and they did just release an album because I know Jeff was showing the new album. I'm pretty sure it was the new album that he was showing, but yeah, I'll leave a link to Jeff's channel as well. But yeah, Triton, fantastic. Silent Tiger, 1990, heavy metal from Chicago. a bit of blues rock. I promised a little bit of blues rock, and I think you can call them blues rock. I don't really, you hear the term indie, but indie could be anything. I mean, it could be any band that's independent, these guys were pretty big late 90s, early 2000s. I saw them 3 times. I saw them in 2000, 2002, and 2012. In fact, I saw them on, so here's the band, Gomez. And I saw them on this tour, which was 2000. The album is called Liquid Skin. They're from England as well. Love this band. I love them a lot. I've always been a big fan of any music that has slide guitar in it. I absolutely adore slide guitar. I've got some other albums I'll show you in other videos that's got some really good slide guitar. One from a great band from Western Australia, where I'm based. But yeah, this album and this band has a lot of slide guitar in it. You might remember a couple of the big songs on here. Bring It On. What's that one? We Haven't Turned Around. Another great big song. They had pretty decent success with those singles from memory. Another interesting thing about this band is that 3 of the members of the band are all the vocalists, so they quite often take different turns on being the vocalists. But what it also means, you have great harmonies in a lot of the songs. Think of some of those harmonies you get in a lot of the Alice in Chains songs. If you think of those sorts of harmonies, then you know what the sort of vocals and harmonies you're getting with the Gomez album. And this is my favourite of theirs, 1999. This is I think it's their second album. Yeah, that's right, because the first one was called Bring It On. So this is, Gomez, Liquid Skin. Great album, blues rock, just really, really, really good stuff. Really, really good stuff. And the last one. Now, remember when record stores, and the one that I go to, well, a couple of the really good ones I go to, actually record stores. I don't mean like your chain music stores, your record stores. They play an actual record and they play it through the speakers of the place you go into. And I always like the places that play things that you've probably never heard of before. And it was a way that I've always, many times have I bought music, because you walk in and you'll be there, wow, this sounds pretty good, and you ask the owner or whoever's behind the counter, who's this? They tell you. And this is exactly what happened with this album. And this album became my favourite non-metal album of 2019. And it's this album. And it's by the singer-songwriter Angelo De Augustine. So good. I mean, it's just magnificent. It's basically just him and an acoustic guitar, a little bit of other music in the background, but not much. He has this wonderful, beautiful, angelic voice. The closest thing I can say is a little bit Jeff Buckley in sound, in his voice. The songs are beautiful, like just breathtakingly beautiful. You Needed Me, I Needed Love. Sorry, I can't read the titles off the back here. As you can see, it's one of these ones that doesn't have any listing, so I'm going purely off memory. I Needed You, I Needed You, You Needed Love, I think it's called. Something like that. It's just mind-blowingly good. Like tear to your eye good. It's like really moving song and just beautiful. And then there's the song Caitlin. Now, Caitlin was the song that I heard playing when I walked into Dada's record store, my favourite. That was the song I heard playing, and I went up behind the counter to, I think it was Chris behind the counter, asked who it was, and bought it instantly. Just a, pretty sort of basic sort of a cover, just not much to it, just the CD inside, and had to Google all about him and find out all about him after that, and love it, absolutely love it. Little bit, if you know the dream pop band Cigarettes After Sex, which is one of the best modern bands there is. In fact, their album of 2018, I think it was my favourite non-metal album of that year. A little bit like that as well. So it sort of moves into that dream pop sound. but not quite. The album's called Tomb, and the artist is Angelo De Augustine, and this was 2019. Absolutely fantastic album. I played this. This was in the car for a very, very long time. It was basically just, I needed a crowbar to get it out of the CD player in the car. I loved it very much. Still love it very much. Play it a lot. So there we go. That's what I've been listening to. Bit of a mix today. Got lots lined up. I'm planning quite a few threads and theme threads. I run a reasonably sized page called Headbangers. And normally on a Friday, I do like the top 10, and I say, what's your top 10 of this? And then the next week, what your top 10 of that? I've done about 350 different topics so far, would you believe? And I do that every Friday. And what's your top 10 of this? What's your top 10 of that? And then people will sort of post what their top 10 favourite of that topic. I'm not going to do the exact same thing on here, but I've thought about incorporating some of the ideas and things that I do on there onto here. So I've got some threads planned. I've got a whole discography that I'm going to show soon. I've got a few of those to do. But yeah, thanks very much for watching. Really appreciate your time and watching my channel. It means a lot. And I'll catch you all very soon.